Okay already.
Welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk channel. I'm going to try an auction draft today. We've got 3 auto drafters here, which is maybe a little bit annoying. With auction drafts, auto drafters actually make a much bigger. Did somebody just show up? Oh yeah, so we only have 2. Makes a much bigger difference because they bid on everybody until they run out of money, so it's kind of annoying. But um, we're going to try it anyway. This is my first auction mock video. Um, for those of you who play auction, welcome. For those of you who don't play auction, I imagine you're not going to watch this one, but I highly recommend playing auction. It is by far the most fun way to play fantasy basketball. It is the most fair way to play fantasy basketball. This year, if you're drafting 11th, you just have a major disadvantage versus the team drafting in slots 1 and 2. In an auction, you can draft whoever you want. So it's just more fun. It's more fair. Highly recommend it. And I wouldn't put my money on the line on a league that's not an auction. With that being said, let's jump into this. Something that I'm seeing in auctions. Let's see. Something that I like to do sometimes is throw out the guy who forces you to build your team a certain way. So Giannis, that's pretty expensive for Giannis already, but that's the auto drafter. And then I like to watch, okay, we got an auto drafter. Somebody else is bidding him up. So that means that somebody else, a real person, Connor, is willing to pay $60 for Giannis. Jokic went for 70. So I go back and forth on this with auction drafts. Sometimes I like to look at where some of the top guys are going and then kind of build valuations of players within that draft based on that. I think that's probably the best way to go. But you can also just have your own valuations in your head. And then, just because Jokic went for 70 doesn't mean that Luka's not also worth 70, right? Like Luka's going to be a little bit cheaper than Jokic pretty much in every draft, but by how much? And is there like an objective value for these players? So it's just an interesting way, I think, to think about it. Each auction draft is going to be very different. I've seen Wemby go for 73. I've seen Wemby go for like over 85 in some auctions. Um, so it's just interesting to see that. And something else that I've noticed over the years from auctions, especially, well, even in regular drafts, I don't play Snake anymore, but when I used to play Snake, you would have somebody like Embiid who goes for 58 in an auction, which in this draft is probably going to end up, you're going to have SGA ahead of him. You'll probably have Anthony Davis ahead of him, and then maybe Halliburton, or maybe not at that price, but you're going to have, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys maybe who are going ahead of Embiid, but sometimes he goes 10th in a snake draft, and somebody takes like Tatum over Embiid, but Embiid goes for more in auctions. So I don't really know why that's the case. But maybe people tend to go for guys who they trust more in a snake than an auction. I don't know if you guys know. Drop down in the comments. I guess every draft is going to be different. That's probably the best answer there. But it's just interesting to see that sometimes this actually happened last year, where Luka was going second in snake, and he was going as like the 7th or 8th most expensive guy in some auctions. So I don't know. Okay, so in terms of auction strategy, there are a few ways to play auction. You can kind of go with the stars and scrubs, which Matthias is doing right now with Jokic and Embiid. That's a pretty heavy stars and scrubs lineup. You can also go balanced throughout your team, so you can draft like 7 $25 guys and then save the rest for those last few. You can also go with like a big 3 or a big 4 or a big 5. So there's a few different ways to do it. I tend to try and just find value. So what I normally do leading up to my auction drafts is I do a bunch of mock auctions, and I hope that we don't get any auto drafters. Sometimes we're going to get some auto drafters, but actually most of the time we get auto drafters, which makes this, it's tough to find a good one. But and you also don't know, like, is Connor playing a points league or a head-to-head league? I don't know. This is just a mock, so we have no idea. But so I try to do a bunch of auctions leading up, and then I kind of figure out the general value that players are going for. And then if I see guys who I like who tend to go cheaper or tend to go cheaper than kind of other guys who I don't like, then I'll build my own strategy or based on that, and go for guys who I find to be cheap. Like I went back and I watched my $1,500 league last year. I recorded it and I watched the video from there, and I found um, that I drafted Chet for $25, and I in the video I said, like, this is great value. I've been seeing him going for around here, and I needed to attack it. I even saved it. I didn't say it on camera until that draft. Art just showed up. Very nice. After drafting Davis for 64. Yeah, so finding guys with value like that, I think, is generally my strategy, which like you can't really quantify because you can't really quantify it because it's I guess it's in my head. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but I'm going to try and show you guys. See if I see any players who I think are going for value in this draft, and then we'll go from there. Sometimes when you play that value game, you end up a little bit stuck, and then you end up overpaying for guys later in the draft. So if I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, so Ja went for 30, Edwards went for 51. That means that Sabonis should go like for 40, but Sabonis might go for 50 here, and then I don't get Sabonis, right? So let's put Sabonis up to 32. See what happens there. We got everybody here now. Look at that. This never happens. This actually might give us some really interesting material. The only problem is Matthias already drafted. Oh, he did that while he was here. So I think we actually have some good stuff here. Yeah, so Sabonis is going to go for mid 40s. I've actually seen him going for like 50 in some auctions, but 45 seems, I guess, reasonable. You see, so we're seeing now that at the turn in a snake draft, Harden is sometimes going at that 12-13 spot, and Sabonis rarely does. Sabonis tends to go a little bit later, but Sabonis went for more expensive than Harden in this draft, and now we know this team right here, the Giannis Ja Morant team, is very likely punting free throws, and we know that the Sabonis team is probably going to have to punt free throws as well. So they might be fighting each other for those later punt free throw guys. Thirsty Dog left, so we lost somebody. Halliburton, his average is 52. When you're looking at somebody like Edwards going for 51, you assume that Halliburton is going to go for a little bit more than that. Probably should be closer to Anthony Davis than Anthony Edwards in between the Anthonys. But we'll see. That's probably enough for me here. Let somebody else take him for high 50s. He goes in that like 5 to 9-ish range in drafts now, in snake drafts. So looks like he's going to get up there above Embiid, who went for 58. Halliburton goes to the Wemby team, and that's the fun thing about auction drafts, is that you can draft the team with Wemby and Halliburton, which would never ever come close to happening in a snake draft unless you're playing in like a 7-man league, and even then you probably have to play in like a 14 league. And then so really just an interesting build there. I guess you can kind of go anywhere you want with Wemby and Halliburton. You're really locking up all 9 categories except maybe field goal. So but you don't have to punt field goal. It's a really interesting build, but you don't have a lot of money, so now you got to play it tight. That's what happens with the Stars and Scrubs team, is if you draft Luka and Anthony Edwards, you got to play the rest of the draft really tight and make sure you're getting the right guys for the right prices. Otherwise, you're really going to screw your team. And with Jokic and Embiid, you probably can't do anything for like the next hour in this draft. Don't worry, we're not going to do this for a whole hour. Let's nominate. See, in an auction draft or an auction mock, I like to nominate guys who I'm just curious where they go for. So this is one. We've got a new team. He's got different value. So I want to see how much he goes for. If we're doing it relative to other guys, he probably should be more expensive than that. He should probably be close to Harden. So if I get Towns for 36 here, I'll be pretty happy. I'll go up one more. Towns is probably like a $25 to $28 player before the trade. He's probably bumped up by $10 or a little bit more. So I don't have any problem with somebody paying 39 for him. That seems pretty reasonable. He's just a little bit tough in head to head. He's a much better roto player because he doesn't have any massive strengths. He's really good across the board, but he just doesn't have any massive strengths where you can like build your team around. So, but I do like him for 39. Tatum is going to go for just a little bit more expensive than Anthony Edwards. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, so I don't know if this is the right way to look at it. This is kind of what I do in my head. Is like, okay, Anthony Edwards went for 51, Trae Young went for 49, Sabonis went for 45. That's kind of your end of the draft, end of the first round, early second round. Harden went for 40, which is cheaper than those guys. But is there really a $9 difference between Trae Young and James Harden? Probably not. So is Harden a steal? Is Trae Young an overpay? It doesn't really matter that much because as you go throughout the draft, your money is limited and you can't carry it over. So I get Fred VanVleet for 32. So if you paid $4 too much for Trae Young, it doesn't really matter because some people end up with $4 at the end of the draft, and some people have $10 at the end and then use them on somebody that they probably shouldn't have grabbed. So it doesn't totally matter if you pay the exact right amount. Like if somebody goes for $2 or $3 more than your valuation, it wasn't necessarily the wrong way to go. The other guy who I'm interested in seeing the price that he goes in this one is Chet. Chet is somebody who I'm fascinated with this year in terms of what his value is. Last year, he was a pretty obvious steal when I got him for $25, but this year he's been going for like 40 plus, and he needs to make improvements in his game to warrant going for more than 40. He's absolutely could. He only played 1 year in the NBA. He's really young. He's really talented, so he could, but he would need to in order for him to be worth that amount of money. So we got Scotty Barnes here on the board. I bid him up just at the last second at 35, and then these guys bid him way up there. 35 felt like a steal compared to James Harden going for 40, Trae Young going for 49. But now that he's in the 40s, I'm going to let him go. Fred VanVleet, as my one player so far, doesn't really tie me to any way of building my team. He generally is a punt points or a punt field goal type of player, but you don't have to with him on your team. So we can kind of attack this any way I want. And so I'm gonna let LeBron go. And I have this concept that I thought of earlier today that I kind of wanted to just record to see if anybody was interested in it. Not sure if I've ever heard it anywhere, maybe, but this concept that I have in my head of building a team backwards. And by that, what I mean by that is, for the most part, you attack your draft by, especially in a snake draft, you want to get your points and your assists and your threes early, more so points and assists, because those tend to dry up really fast towards the end of the draft. And the guys who do that at the end of the draft, like a Colin Sexton or a Cam Thomas or a Jordan Poole or what have you, have so many flaws that they really tank you in certain categories. So they're hard to make your anchor in that stat unless you've attacked it so much earlier that you're punting those categories. What I mean by building your team backwards is, instead of drafting Donovan Mitchell or James Harden or Trae Young in the first round or in the beginning of a draft, you take Karl Anthony Towns, you take Luka Doncic would be the ultimate in this because he also scores and he rebounds. But you take Towns, you take Chet Holmgren, you take bigs who are not going to hurt you in field goal and free throw. I mean, Wemby, right? Wemby's going to be super expensive in an auction, but you build your team backwards. You take bigs who are going to help you in big man stats and not going to hurt you in points and free throw, and then you grab your scorers late. So you go after the Colin Sextons and the Jordan Clarksons and the Cam Thomases of the world later on to shore up those points. But other teams in that area of the draft are going to be attacking bigs who have flaws in other ways. Somebody's going to take Jakob Poeltl, who's going to hurt you in free throws. Somebody's going to take Brook Lopez, who's going to hurt you in rebounding. And you're going to, so you can build your team that way. It only really works in a snake. I think if you draft a big in the first round, I wouldn't do it with Giannis, but you can do it with Luka. You can do anything with Jokic. So you could do it with Jokic. You could do it with Embiid because of the scoring and he gets those assists. But you can kind of do anything with Embiid also. So guys like maybe Sabonis, you wouldn't take him in the first round. Towns, you wouldn't take in the first round. So I think it's more of an auction build. I said it was more of a snake build. I think it's actually more of an auction build. But just something to think about, building your team a different way. So on a team with Fred VanVleet, LaMelo Ball makes a lot of sense. There's also that massive injury risk, and I'm also bidding against an auto bidder here. That mid-second round, all right, never mind. I went for 36. Somebody else went for 37. I think I'm going to let him go at that price and live to fight another day here with all this money. Oh, Jeff left also, and Seth and Art. Now we're missing a few people, so it's going to make this a little bit less interesting. That's the problem with these auction mocks. I just can't quite get a good one. Even one that starts well, people tend to leave, and then that's kind of the end of it. You just get all these auto drafters, and then another person gets fed up with the auto drafters, so they leave, and that makes it worse. And then your snake draft, your snake draft, your auction mock is kind of ruined. So it's really hard to practice the end game, which in my eyes is one of the most important parts of an auction. Let's talk about that. So one of my main strategies in an auction draft is to save some money at the end. A lot of people like to go hard early, like this team. I mean, I guess he's auto drafting now, but Jokic, Embiid, Booker, $25 left for 10 players. He's going to be on that $1 train, the bargain bin. Let's see. But we have so many auto drafters with money. Well, that's okay. Let's see what Chet goes for. He's going to jump. Oh, I'm only 27. All the way up to 35. So the auto drafters aren't touching him. I'm just bidding him up because I want to see at what point people are going to stop. I'd also be happy with a Fred VanVleet Chet team because I can be a punt points monster with these two guys. So Chet was bid up to 41. I'm the 42. We do have 4 people missing. 43. Wow. 44. We're going to see Chet. Is somebody going to bid 45? No. So we get Chet for 44. I don't know. That doesn't seem crazy. It seems about right based on the valuation of other players. I probably wouldn't pay $4 more for Chet than Harden, but and 9 more than Durant. But I just wanted to see what he would go for. I think there's more hype around somebody like that because of the upside. We know what Kevin Durant is, right? We kind of know what James Harden is. We know what a lot of these guys are. We know what Tatum is. We know what Sabonis is, maybe. But we don't know what Chet is. Does Chet have Wemby upside? Probably not. But he's kind of like Wemby light. So, you're probably paying $5 or $6 more in an auction just to see, just for that potential upside. Because you know what? We might be looking at this next year as Chet is going number 10, like his ADP is around 10, and he's a $55 player. And now I got somebody for $10 cheaper than they should have gone for. So that's definitely possible. I'm not banking on it. I was just curious to see what price he went for. But I was talking about the end of draft. So my philosophy for the most part, is to try and save some money for the end of the draft to go get those late guys who I want. A lot of people will be like, I'll save some $1 players and I'll go get those guys I want for $1. But I'm going to come in there with my $2 and take them from you. So I like to save up that amount of money, and that means that you really have to play it tight throughout. You can't get loose with your money and just say, all right, I'm going to throw, I'm going to bid up Luka. He went for 61. I'm going to bid up 62 because I want somebody to pay 63, and then I get him for 62. Sometimes that's the move, and then it backfires, and sometimes doesn't. Sometimes somebody bids up again, and then you force somebody to pay an extra $2, and that's huge. That makes a huge difference at the end of the draft. Somebody has $2 less. So I think these thoughts are kind of all over the place here, but you guys get what I'm saying. So I drafted Kyrie Irving for 35. Per game, Kyrie is a $50-something player, so I don't see any problem with that. That's more just about his injury stuff. And you know what? I have Fred VanVleet, who's been relatively healthy. I've got Chet, who's played every single game so far of his career, other than the 1 year where he missed every game. So I don't know. I'll take it. It seems like good value, and I can still punt points. This team is still an awesome punt points team. It also doesn't have to, because this team is just super well-rounded at this point. I'm good across the board. I've got really everything here. My field goal percentage might be a little bit low because, and I mentioned this in another video, but Chet's field goal is not quite good enough to make up for somebody who's kind of a field goal tanker like Fred VanVleet, whereas somebody like Sabonis, who went for about the same price as Chet, can make up for somebody like Fred VanVleet. Does Kyrie and Chet make up for it? Maybe. But then I can't take another guy to tank my field goal percentage, because if I do, then I'm screwed. And then I'm basically punting that category. So that's something you got to be careful with if you're drafting Fred VanVleet. Something fun I wanted to point out. So Jeff F here at the bottom, who left this draft, I've been doing a lot of auction mocks, just jumping in, trying to see what's going on. Most of the time, I'm only in for like 10 minutes, and this is what happens. People leave, and then I leave because don't get that much value out of it. But Jeff is in almost all of them. And he tends to have, I hope he's watching this. I would love to talk to him, because he has pretty much the same strategy. And last year it was the same thing, and he had a different strategy, but it was the same strategy that year for every mock draft that he did. And I'm just interested, like, the point of a mock is to practice and to see what happens with certain players, and seeing a wide variety of outcomes. And Jeff came back, and he or she, I guess, doesn't do that. Just keeps drafting the same players. And this is actually one of those guys. So Jeff always goes after J-Dub. I think Jeff is willing to pay like 34 or something. And there you go. Jeff is at 31. I bet if I go up to 32, Jeff will go up to 33. I really hope Jeff is watching this. You know what? I hope you guys are still watching this, because we're going to be like 20 minutes into the video at this point. And Jeff did exactly what I thought. So that's actually something that I'm a little worried about with people watching this, is I play some high stakes auctions, and people are going to watch me do an auction draft. This is not a real one, but a mock draft, and they're going to say, oh, I know his strategy. But unless you're targeting the same players every time, like Jeff does, and Jeff leaves, unless you're targeting the same players every time, I don't know if you can really get any benefit from knowing somebody's strategy, because my strategy is fluid. That's what an auction draft is all about, is being dynamic and fluid and understanding player values that you think what those players' values are, and then drafting guys who you think are going to have good value. So for this punt points build, I'm not going to do this video too much longer, because we got 5, 6 auto drafters, and I don't really know what's going on with the valuations and all that, but So for this punt points team that has Kyrie, I don't have to punt points. I can go after some scorers like I talked about with that backwards build, guys like Cam Thomas, Colin Sexton. I don't know if they'll quite make that big of a difference. Somebody who Jeff likes to go after, Jalen Johnson. Let's see if he's got him on auto draft. Maybe not. He likes the Jalen's. Jalen Johnson is actually a pretty good player in the punt points build. So this team probably has to draft somebody, and we'll throw some guys on the queue. So we'll probably need Alex Caruso. Probably needs a couple bigs. So like Brooke Lopez, but then the rebounding becomes an issue. So actually, let's do it like this. So Evan Mobley is probably one of the best bets here. This team can afford to go after one bad free throw guy. So Rudy Gobert is an option if he goes for cheap. Derek White is absolutely awesome in this build. Jared Allen, because of those rebounds, is pretty important. DeAndre Ayton is really good in this build, but I wouldn't pay 22 for him. We're just going to drop down the board here. Jalen Duren, pretty solid for this build. And we have Chet's blocks, and actually Kyrie and Fred VanVleet were pretty good shot blockers last year. If we look at my team, why don't we go to my team? VanVleet was at 0.8, probably goes down to like 0.5, but Kyrie was 0.5. So we're looking at like 3.5 blocks or so for these three players, which is pretty good. Jaren Jackson Jr. would be interesting, but doesn't really rebound enough for this build. So let's keep going down here. Claxton would be the option if Rudy Gobert it goes for too expensive. Darius Garland to get some more assists could be important. Michael Porter Jr. is pretty awesome in a punt assist, but also pretty solid in a punt points because he's cheap and he gets you those threes. Doesn't really hurt your field goal. Tobias Harris is absolutely incredible in a punt points and actually might be good in points this year. He might be like a 19, 20 point scorer. Keegan Murray was like that last year, but I think he's going to suffer a little bit in Sacramento as the fourth guy instead of the third guy. Isaiah Hartenstein is an absolute monster in this punt. Let's see where he ended up last year. The straight punt points, he was 35th. Yeah, that's really good. Brooke Lopez, like I said, I keep kind of gravitating towards Austin Reeves in punt points because he does shoot kind of enough threes and give you enough assists while not really helping your points, but doesn't hurt your percentages. Doesn't get the defensive stats, which is kind of a bummer, but he is pretty damn good in a punt points. We can actually see what he was last year, 101. So I don't think that does him justice. I would absolutely take him for like $10 in this kind of build. Because no, actually this team's going to be pretty good in threes, but I probably would need to tackle a threes and assists guy kind of later in the draft. So D'Angelo Russell fits that build. Devin Vassell also would, but with his injury, I'm not sure I'm that interested. I don't understand why Dylan Brooks goes for $7. Is that a points league thing? Honestly, guys, don't ask me points league questions. Don't know anything about points leagues. Nothing. OG is going to be a low score and low volume, so I don't think he's going to hurt your percentages that much, but great defensive stats. And those are kind of the guys who make the most sense in this build. A guy like Herb Jones, who ended up going for $8, those are where you really cash in this build. Herb Jones was 40th, and Caruso was 21st. Daniel Gafford, Derek White, those kind of guys, probably kind of who you have to target. Zubats, Gafford, Caruso, I got on there already. Walker Kessler, maybe he bounces back. actually like Bogdan Bogdanovic in this. I know he's kind of a scorer, but it's really those threes that help you. And if you're punting points, you really need to tackle threes. So he's somebody like that. Simons is somebody like that. Doesn't really get those defensive stats though. Trey Murphy and Klay Thompson are like that. Jalen Suggs. So there really are a lot of guys. Nas Reed, kind of. Josh Hart. Then you can get guys like Chris Paul, Lively. You see what happens here. So I spent $111 on 3 players, and I don't really have to spend a lot on any other player to build a really good team here, because I can get Chris Paul and Tyus Jones, or one of them, and really boost my assists. And now I have Van Vliet and Kyrie and Tyus Jones or Chris Paul. And then if I also have Derek White, then I'm going to be pretty solid in assists. Chet averaged 2.5 last year, which is not nothing. Hey, Jeff is back. So in a normal draft, I would probably bid up Miles Turner here. But guys, if you've watched this long, I am working on a way for you guys to access me. So I might just create an email account for you guys to email. If I do, I'll post it down in the description, and you can reach out to me, and we can schedule a time to chat if you want to talk about your team, if you want to ask some questions, if you just want to generally talk about basketball. I'm always up for it. If you do want to do like a session, I'm going to charge a fee, but we can figure that out. So look down in the description for my email that I'm going to create for you guys. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do another few minutes here, even though we got a lot of auto drafters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 auto drafters. That's actually not so horrible. And the strategy for a lot of people is throw out a guy who you think people are going to spend money on and somebody you don't want, right? That's how you get people to spend money in an auction. I'm going to go the other way, and I'm going to nominate Derek White, who I know Jeff really likes. And we'll see how much he goes for. See if I can get him. I'm probably going to have to outbid Jeff, though. Jeff also tends to not show his interest until later on. He has a very specific strategy, and I love that I know it. It's really fun. I don't actually know how much he's going to go for Derek White. But apparently it's mid-20s. Should we push him one more time? He's also very disciplined, so if you go above his number, he's done. I've also never seen him bid you up at the last second. So Derek White goes for 26. Is it too expensive? Well, considering he went for like $3 or $4 last year, yes. That's probably reasonable for Derek White. He does really help me in threes and assists, and boy, was he good in this build last year. He was 16th. If his field goal percentage takes a hit, it probably means his 3-point percentage took a hit, which would really tank him, not just in this build, but just kind of for regular drafts. So, oh God, Hardenstein's going for 16. He's so good in this build, but he's not worth $16. I don't think he's worth $16 if you're not punting points. If you are, he is. But the whole point is to find value late in the draft with a punt, not pay what somebody's actually worth in a regular draft. So, or for just like standard 9-cat. All right, guys, we'll do one more player here. Jaylen Brown absolutely does not fit this build at all. He was 129th in punt points last year, but he's definitely worth $20. So I'm going to try bidding him up a little bit. If I get him, maybe I don't punt points. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. You guys have all been asking for this auction draft, this auction mock, so I got it here for you. This thing's probably going to take another hour, so I'm not going to waste your time doing that, especially with all these auto drafters. But as you can see, I threw all these guys in my queue. I'll open up the queue a little bit more so you can see the whole thing. It's important to note that it's important to note which of these players you draft. So you wouldn't want to draft Gafford and Kessler and Zubats and Derek Lively, because then you're neglecting the other categories that you need. Another player. Ooh, Kawhi Leonard, another player. I'm really interested in seeing where he goes. Let's finish on that note. So Kawhi Leonard, I'm going to bid him up. I'm going to take him. I'm getting bid up by the auto bidders here. So this guy has plenty of money to spend who's bidding against me. In a punt points, well, Kawhi Leonard's was good in any build last year. But we're just going to see where he goes. We're going to see where he is in a punt points. Just want to see. So somebody was willing to bid 26. Somebody's willing to bid 28 with nobody else having any money. Just Jeff, who's just not participating. So Kawhi goes for 30. He's also waiting to the last second, which is always annoying. So Kawhi goes for 30. I take him for 31, but Kawhi goes for 30 in this one by DJ Premier wanted him. He has LaMelo, DeJounte, Durant, Herb, and Porzingis. I guess he's all, maybe, no, I don't know. What's he? Just an all-around build, I guess. Nothing wrong with that. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I didn't even draft my whole team here, but we can show it to you guys before we go. I would definitely have to attack. Well, I wouldn't have drafted Kawhi, but I'd have to attack some bigs and still flesh out some assists. But I really like this team. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I still got to do a few mock drafts for a few different spots. I haven't done Wemby or Jokic or Luka, although those are probably the least interesting ones. And maybe one more end of draft. All right, guys. See you later.